Hey everyone, we are here with Beyond the Sermon in our Beyond the Story series with Liz Thong, who spoke on the weekend at our Knox congregation location. Amazing message, Liz. Always love hearing you speak. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, and I enjoyed preparing the message as well. So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Now, Liz, you spoke on the parable of the Great Banquet, and I've eaten at your house. I've had the great privilege of eating one of your great banquets, and you're an amazing cook. Is this something that you enjoy doing, like getting people together for a meal?
Thanks, Prisita. I think we had you guys over before you had your little one.
I was pregnant with my first child.
Before Lily came along.
Yeah,
that was wonderful.
Ago.
Yeah, no, I enjoy hosting people.
Yes.
Though it can be a bit of an effort, but it is fun to have people over and just have a great time getting to know people at a deeper level. I don't think I've had just superficial conversations with you, but I think when we came home, we had a great time just getting to know you guys a little bit more.
It was fun.
And I think that's the beauty of having someone at your home, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think you can get to know them at a deeper level.
Yeah.
I remember your cooking was so good that I was so annoyed that I was pregnant because my baby was squishing my stomach up and I couldn't fit any more food in. And I just wanted to keep eating because it tasted so good. You're an incredible host.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I enjoy cooking, looking up recipes and seeing, coming up with stuff.
Yeah.
It's great. I enjoy doing it. I loved having Lachlan and you over. So thank you for coming over. We've got to do a part 2 sometime.
I'm keen for a part 2, Liz. Anytime. You just tell me, I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'm not pregnant and
you can eat
I'm
more.
ready to eat more. I'm ready to down that food.
Let's do it. Let's come up with some dates.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Now, you spoke on the Great Banquet. What is it like? What do you love about this parable?
I think how honest Jesus was.
Yeah.
He called it out. I mean, we think of Jesus as gentle, mild and sweet, but he comes across, he cuts through, he picks out, all the stuff that is hidden and brings it to the surface and gets people to deal with it. And I think that's so important, isn't it, in our Christian journey?
Yes.
Like sometimes we push those stuff underneath and we don't deal with the things. And Jesus brings those things to the surface so we can become more like him and get changed in the process. And I think that's very powerful. The parable does that in a beautiful way.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that. You said grace is so extraordinary that it demands that we go and compel others to experience it. Like you really spoke about the beauty and wonder of grace. You also spoke about God's blessing beyond the Israelites, really drew in from the New Testament, Old Testament. What does that all mean for us today to walk in God's grace?
I think it's seeing others as Jesus sees them.
Love that.
I think we live in such a divided world that we have our own biases, prejudices. Some of it could be from our upbringing, some of it from, just what we picked up from culture. Some of it is from our sinful nature. And I think we all have that. And I think it's important that we realize our shortcomings and see people the way Jesus sees them and embrace them and realize that no one is beyond God's love and grace. And that means how can we live that out in our own lives by showing love and kindness and extending grace and having them part of our lives. And we don't need to always socialize with the same kind of people who are similar to us. How about reaching and crossing boundaries?
Wow.
And reaching out to the ones that sometimes we overlook or we don't necessarily want to engage with. We are not comfortable. People who push up buttons, people who, we think they make us look bad or worse off if we associate with them. Sometimes we are so conscious of who we are with and how they make us look. And I think sometimes we operate in that sphere, and I think that is so biased and prejudiced in a way and doesn't reflect God's table and God's love. And I think that's what this parable is about, isn't it? That inclusivity to reach out. And grace compels.
Yes.
I love how that word is used in that parable to say it's not a going out and, forcing someone, but it's like, it's a grace to let people know this is something amazing. You're missing out if you're not in it with us. And it's that kind of compulsion.
Yes.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's almost like an energy, like a passion, like a drive to go and do it. Like I can't help but want to share this good news with people.
That's right.
Incredible. And no matter who they are, right? Like
exactly.
you speak about that inclusivity and including everybody in that,
Yeah.
which is amazing. What do you think it means to have a heart transformation when it comes to sitting at the table with Jesus? You talk about this banquet, and God is like holding this banquet and inviting people into this space. And you spoke into this whole thing about having a heart transformation. What does that mean for us to have hearts that are transformed?
I think increasingly looking like Jesus.
Yeah, wow.
And that means seeing people having the mind of Christ. Sometimes we're so caught up in a certain way of thinking and we can't correct that. Sometimes we're so good at, like the Pharisees, maybe keeping all the rules, like, go to church, read the Bible, and we do all of that. But are we getting really closer to Christ? And that is reflected in the way we treat people, isn't it? And the way we love people. If we can't love people whom we see, how can we show the love to God whom we can't see? I think there's a verse like that in John or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, so I think it's that heart transformation. I think people will know we've had a heart transformation by the way we engage and love people. I think for me that comes from a place of really knowing God, his heart, feeling his heartbeat, thinking like him, being like him. And it's not just head knowledge, because I think sometimes in churches like ours, there's plenty to learn from a sermon. Like we've all got enough content, but are we actually putting that in practice? Are we obeying him like that obedient servant? Like he was challenged and he went out and did it. Like, do we go out and do what we know? I think that's so important, isn't it? It's not just the knowledge, it's not just the content, because we can have all of that, but is it really changing our behavior inside out, from the inside? Are we becoming more like Christ? Yeah,
I remember I had someone coaching me in preaching once, and they said, like, you've always got to ask the question, so what? It's just like Jesus came and he did these things, but so what? Like, what is it? How does it actually compel me to change and compel me to live out something different? You're like a very busy person. Like, I know that you are. Like, you have so much on your plate. I always joke that I want to, well, I'm not really joking, I want to be like you when I grow up.
Oh, you yourself are busy.
No, please. You're like super mum.
You're super mum too,
like
with 2
3 kids. You like, like businesswoman. How do you juggle all of that with drawing closer to Jesus? Like, how do you go into those deeper places and carve out time for that, but also like keep it at the forefront of your mind when you're juggling so much in your day-to-day world?
I think sometimes it's just hard when you're, I mean, all of us lead busy lives. I mean, no matter who. I think carving out 1 hour to say, I'm sitting at the foot of Jesus and reading the Bible sometimes just doesn't happen. You've got to just go along with the flow and incorporate Jesus in your day as you go about things. Like sometimes I'm praying in tongues when I'm driving down for school pickups. I'm sitting in the car by myself. That's the time I engage with God. There are times when I need to switch out and go for a walk in nature, and then I'm talking to God. Like when I wake up, I'm having this conversation with God. God, help me today in this meeting. Help me to say the right things, when I'm actually engaging with this person, or just that awareness of God. Yes, we've got to carve out time to read the Bible and pray. That's no doubt about it. Sometimes if I can't do it in the morning, I do that in the evening before going to bed. But it's that constant awareness of his presence, and knowing that whatever we are doing, it's all for the glory of God. Whether we are in a meeting with someone, whether we're doing a school pickup, whether we are, just at the supermarket picking up our stuff and, just running home to cook a dinner, whatever we are doing, I think we've got to be aware that God's in this. Having that open dialogue with God, and sometimes listening for his voice, and just being aware of him, and developing that kind of intimacy, I think has helped me sustain my faith. Because it's a crazy busy lifestyle we all live, isn't it, these days?
It is, isn't it? It's just wild how much we all have on our plate and all the things that we're juggling. And I love that you talk about having him with you all the time. How do you think we can, I'm going like totally off script now, I hope that's okay.
That's fine.
How do we kind of have that awareness of his presence in our day-to-day? So you talk about being able to listen to his voice. Like, how do you sort of cultivate that as, I guess, more like a day-to-day thing? I don't want to say like a habit, but it's like a natural part of your life, I guess.
It's a longing.
Right, yeah.
Like when you're intimate with someone, you long for that person, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, if you remember, go back to when you first fell in love, Risita. Like there's that longing.
I still love my husband. I go, I miss you, babe. Like,
That's great. I love how Psalm 42, I think, puts it this way. It says, as the deer pants for water, so I long after you. So are we longing? Do we have that first love for Jesus?
Yeah.
I think when we lose that first love, we're so focused on ourselves. And I find that sometimes I do that. Like I'm so focused on myself and not on God or others. And I think that's an indication that you've sort of lost connection with God and that intimacy, and you're so like that's what the Pharisees did. They were so focused on themselves, self-righteousness. And sometimes we can live out of that space. It might not be righteousness, it might be something else. But I think it's that taking that focus off ourselves. In a world that is so self-focused and the focus spotlight is on you and taking selfies, we've got to shift that focus back to God and have that longing for him, that we want to run after him. And when that longing and that first love is there, then we're coming back to him for everything. We might fail, we might stumble, we might not get it right a few days, and we say, God, no, I'm sorry, I want to come back to you. And it's that pull to come back to Jesus, to engage with him, to love him more, to draw closer to him. And the amazing thing is he doesn't condemn us. Like we fail so many times. Like there might be a day we're so focused on what we've got to do, we never spend time with God. But God doesn't say, hey, why did you do that, Liz? He's not angry, so you can come back. I just love the beauty of that, like just confessing our failures, being vulnerable with Jesus. We can be real. He knows it anyway. So why not just come back to him? And just embrace him and long for him. And I think that in that longing, there's that transformation that happens, that intimacy, that change happens even without us sometimes being so conscious of it.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. He just works in our heart, I feel like, even without us knowing, which I love that. I think it's so beautiful. You spoke about how your table reflects the openness of God's grace. Like you asked, and I thought this was such a moment where you said, does your table reflect the openness of God's grace? And like that hit me. I was like, what, does it? What do you think that looks like practically for us in our day-to-day life to have I don't know, lives, I want to say like a household, but just lives that reflect the openness of God's grace?
I think there might be people that should be overlooked. Maybe it's a workplace. Maybe it's that one person we don't want to engage with, that we avoid,
Yes.
If you see them in the
Not
kitchen.
Not at my workplace, but okay.
Or maybe it's that mum at school that you don't want to engage with, or that person who's a bit odd, or it could be that new migrant down the street, or maybe that elderly person who lives down the road. You just haven't reached out. And I think it's in that discomfort that you feel that you actually take the step to overcome that and cross the boundary, cross that bridge, and reach out to someone who's not typically in your circle naturally. And I think that's the challenge. I think if we get able to be conscious of that and challenge the biases and prejudice and ask ourselves the question, why am I not comfortable with this? Like, is it a prejudice or bias I have? Is it some sort of a button they're pushing? Is it a reminder of something from my past?
That's good.
Is it something that I need to deal with? And then it helps us to engage and cross that boundary, isn't it? Like, I think we've got to be conscious of it, and I think we can make time for it. Might be that extra 2 minutes, It doesn't need to be something elaborate. It might be just a conversation to feel you're valued, accepted, you're loved. I see you. I see you. You're made in the image of God. And no matter how different you are, I still embrace you. And I think that kind of vibe coming from us. And it's got to be genuine. Like, it's not a made up thing, It's got to come from the inside, because people can pick up when it's fake.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's got to be allowing God to work in our hearts, so it's just a natural way. We embrace people. I think that's
out of the overflow of our
hearts. Exactly.
I think I love what you said about like seeing people, but what I really love about that is that it's not just something that we're doing for other people. You're saying that we should be self-reflecting on ourselves as well. Like, why does it make me uncomfortable? Like, why does that not sit right with me? It causes us to maybe like dig through some of the stuff that we need to give to God in ourselves as well. So like as we reach out to people with grace, God extends grace to us in those moments as well. It's this beautiful like interchange, isn't it? I love that. Now you and I, we love cooking. We love hosting and having people over. You and I just...
I think you are the better cook,
Well,
Rosita.
no, I think you are. I don't
You
think... No.
Definitely.
Please, I've not wanted to eat my food as much as I've wanted to eat yours.
I think there's something in that, isn't it? We always love eating someone else's food.
Cooks for me. Exactly.
I don't think my cooking is that great. I think I enjoy when I go over to someone's place and enjoy their food, because I think once you put in that effort and you smell everything you've cooked, you kind of feel like, no.
You spent so much time with it.
Yeah.
I know.
I enjoy someone else's.
I feel that.
Yeah.
But what about people who maybe don't have that natural, like, I want to cook for people, have people over, have them in my home? What are some other ways people could reach out to other people in their community, maybe those people that are on the fringes a little bit, people you want to be inclusive towards, that you've been challenged by God to be inclusive towards? What are some practical things that we can be doing this week to reach out to people if you're not a cook up and feast and have people over type person?
I think the whole point is to catch up with people. It could be in a coffee place, or just go for a walk in the park if you have like 15-20 minutes with someone, and you have a break, you want to catch up with someone, or it could be simple things like that. Like, it doesn't have to be this mega cooking that you do at home and hosting, like the way I described it in my sermon. It's like a 3-day process to buy stuff and cook. But sometimes we don't have the time for that. This year I've even cheated a bit by invited people over and just done a takeaway.
Love it.
Because you just don't have the time to do 3 days of prep to actually get something on the table and make it that elaborate.
That's right.
Or you could just join with friends and say, hey, how about we meet up, but each of us brings a dish or something, potluck style. You could even do stuff like, the weather's great, go out and do a barbecue with friends.
That's great.
The whole point is just to have time, spend time with people. Sometimes over a meal, and sometimes maybe at the beach or something, that summer's coming up. It could be any of these different ways. We have to make it simple, because sometimes if you make it this elaborate thing, we do it less often. I think sometimes it can be spontaneous even. Say, hey, are you free? Can we do this? And we might be just getting a bunch of 2-3 families together, sharing the load.
Love it.
I think we've got to make it easy and practical.
That's really great.
Otherwise it never happens.
Yes, it doesn't.
It doesn't happen.
I think it's also like, I love what you said about just seeing people. Like, I know for me, it's just taking that extra 10 minutes in the driveway when I see one of my neighbours and engaging with them, and just those little things. Or there's like one checkout that I always go through when I go through Coles, and a checkout guy is called Doug. And I always try to go through his checkout, because I try to remember what he spoke to me about last time.
Oh, that's great.
Connect with him.
Just knowing people's names.
Little things.
Like, I love Grandma Judy and Grandpa David next door. My kids call them Grandma and Grandpa. So like, we pop by, sometimes they just drop by, and just this spontaneous conversations. It's nothing elaborate, but you're there for each other.
That's it.
And I think it's beautiful. There's beauty in that, isn't it? And just embracing people and just loving them.
Love it. Thank you so much, Liz, for joining us in Beyond the Sermon. Loved your preaching, and thanks everyone for being with us today. Let's thank Liz.
Thank you, Rosita. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you soon.